everyone, it's the Miserable Movie Man back again with my latest video, which is on one of my favorite superhero films, and we're not talking about all the Marvel films that came out when I was a bit older, but a film that had a lot of impact on me as a kid. I watched it over and over and over again, and this film has a bit of history because there are a lot of things that happened during the making of the film, after the film was released, many years after the film was released as well. And that film is Superman 2, which, in accordance with tradition, the sequel of many films seems to be the best in the series. We got that with Terminator 2, Back to the Future 2, Star Trek 2, etc.
Empire Strikes Back!
But this video really is more about, the title is what it says. It says 5 reasons why I prefer the Richard Lester cut to the Richard Donner cut. But really, it's a little bit more in defense of Richard Lester, because I think the guy gets a bad rap. I think people don't always understand the situation that he was in. And yes, Richard Donner is an incredible filmmaker. Yes, Richard Donner gave us an unbelievable first film of Superman 1. And yes, the Richard Donner cut is not complete. After the problems he had, more so with Pierre Spengler than the Salkinds, but really it was all three of them that got him fired. Then Richard Lester had to come in and perform a job that was quite difficult in nature. So I do think if Donner had stayed on and we'd got the time and effort for him to give us a definitive version of Superman 2, we would have had an amazing film. And of course, the version that we got and the cut that we got isn't complete.
You don't say.
And has a number of scenes and shots that are from screen tests or otherwise. But having said all that, I do think that the Richard Donner cut, while trying to stay more true to the first film and the character that they'd established, does a disservice to Superman in some areas, and for me, there are parts of the Lester cut that are more preferable. Let's talk a little bit about why Lester's there. I think that helps give him some legitimate reasons to be put in a difficult situation. So, if you know or you don't know, Richard Lester made the Musketeers films for the Salkinds, and as part of that, he made, 2 films almost back to back.
Both keys at the same time?
He made one large film. They were going to cut it into 2, but they decided not to. And Richard Lester was actually not paid some of what he was owed by the Salkinds, who were not the most above board folks to deal with. They were a little bit unscrupulous at times. But again, you do have to kind of credit them for getting Superman onto the big screen and making it successful as the initiators of the project. Now, having said all that, and this is a long intro, when they were making Superman 1 and Richard Donner was shooting it, of course he was going to have the time travel sequence of turning Earth back in time as the big ending to Superman 2. So, similar to the Musketeers films, they shot Superman 1 and a large part of what they thought was going to be Superman 2 back-to-back to save money, hoping it was going to be a great success, which it did turn out to be in the end.
Damn. It's a hit.
But, having said all that, Richard Donner did have a lot of stress and tension with the producers. He was consistently over budget, and he was a hit director from The Omen. Still a young director, but a hit director. But the Salkinds didn't really trust him, and that was a big problem. So they brought Lester in as a kind of steady hand to steady the ship, and Lester actually helped out, obviously, in filming some of those scenes that happened at the time of Superman 1. And then what happened after they fired him was the success of 1 meant clearly they had to do 2, but, they'd used the big ending of the time travel in 1 already, so they had to figure out a way of ending 2. And they brought Lester in to do reshoots, essentially, I think 2 years later. Now, in order to get a director's credit, you have to have, I think, more than 50% of the film shot by you.
I did not know that.
So Lester came in, had to come up with the writers with new sequences to cover some of the areas that they were not going to use and cover some of the plot points that were no longer usable based on the ending of 1. And then on top of that, he had to work to a pretty tight pressure and deadline and budget again. And on top of that, the large part of the cast didn't want to work with him based out of loyalty to Donner. Now, I think Richard Donner had a different working style with the actors. Certainly, Richard Lester was a very nice guy. I think he treated everyone very well, and he's well regarded as a good director. But I think Donner's vision and charm was so much stronger with some of the principal actors that it made Lester's job quite difficult. Essentially, imagine coming in to a well-oiled football team and having the manager depart and trying to take it over midway through the season.
Ted Lasso welcome wagon has arrived.
Now that is a tough ask, especially with a manager who had as much personality and charm as Richard Donner. But obviously Lester had to do it. And so it was clearly documented that Margot Kidder didn't really want to work with him. Gene Hackman didn't, in fact, come back at all. He couldn't use Brando because of Brando's demands for screen time and compensation for using his image. So actually, Richard Lester didn't have an easy situation. He had people that he didn't want to work with him. He had big parts of the film that he had to try and figure out how to make work, working with the writers again. And he had to live up to all of the hype of Superman 1. So with all that said in mind, I think Richard Lester did a pretty good job of delivering what is considered a classic film. I mean, there are parts of the Donner cut that I prefer, but there are large parts of the Lester cut that I prefer. And I'm going to skip over the, calling out the Donner cut to say, yeah, it isn't finished. I'm going to skip over some of the things that don't make sense, like Zod being able to shout free while he's in space.
Space talk.
I guess they also do talk on the moon in the Lester cut. I'm going to skip the nuclear missile exploding in space in the Donner cut without actually hitting anything. Both films have flaws, and both films have good and pieces that work and pieces that are not so good. Even Superman in both cuts trying to whisper to Lex about the chamber, and in fact the 3 supervillains right next to him have super hearing, so why is Superman whispering again? But anyway, all that said and done, it's a very long intro to really, I think, give the context and the scene with which to, I think, give Richard Lester way more credit than he currently gets. And this is not to put Richard Donner down in any way, because I love Richard Donner, I love all of his films.
Just get on with it.
But here are 5 reasons that I prefer the Richard Lester cut over the Donner cut. So reason number 1, I much prefer the way that Lois finds out Clark is Superman. Yes, she puts her life in danger in the Donner cut, and it's similar to her putting her life in danger at Niagara Falls. But in the Donner cut, Clark goes right down into the streets of Metropolis, and he uses his heat vision right on the street. No one seems to notice that there's a guy with laser beams coming out of his eyes, opening an awning for it to bounce off of. But I really do think that the Lester cut handles it in a much better way. Firing a blank at Clark is not something that I think would work in the context of setting up Superman to be who he is. His abilities would easily be able to detect it's a blank, and having Lois outsmart him to find his identity doesn't sit that well with me. I much prefer the Lester version where there's a bit of comedy and bumbling, but really it seems to be a decision that Clark has made to let Lois know. And that decision comes from his heart and the love that he has for Lois. So that played better in terms of the character to me than the way Donner put it. And I know Donner had the screen test, so maybe he would have changed things. But just in the way Donner had it envisioned to have Lois find out that Clark is Superman. Point number 2, I think Christopher Reeve especially, but also some of the others like Margot Kidder, was a much better actor for the reshoots. I mean, 2 lines in particular that Reeve delivers, I think, sums up his talent and his progress over the reshoots, or the parts that Donna used. When he says, "Mother, I love her," in the fortress, and the speech that he gives, that is much better and much more emotionally portrayed than him being the slightly churlish child and railing at Marlon Brando that, he has found love and that he loves Lois and he's going to do this.
Now, see, that's acting.
Also, the line when he screams "father" at the end when he's trying to get his powers back. The emotion conveyed in that scene and the way it kind of flows is way stronger to me than what he says in the Donna cut. Similarly, when he finds out about Zod, and he says in the Lester cut, "They knew, I heard them, I just didn't listen." That acting, the enunciation, again, has much more emotional impact and resonance to me in the Lester cut than the Donna cut, but obviously part of that is due to the time elapsed between shooting the 2 versions and also the fact that Reeve had progressed as an actor. Even Margot Kidder, there's lines that she delivers in the Lester cut, at the end when they're in the Daily Planet office, where she says, "If there's any way at all to be here, he'll be here." That, again, to me was delivered better than the Donna cut. And so there are performances in the Lester cut and lines that I certainly prefer to the Donna cut. Number 3, I like the Eiffel Tower scene.
So sue me! Lock me up!
I think it's a great scene of showcasing that Superman is international. I think there's some great interplay between Perry and Clark at the start, where Clark says, "That's terrible. That's why they call them terrorists, Kent." The fact that Lois goes to Paris and Clark flies there to save her, and having a bomb explode in space to free the Kryptonian villains was great. Now, I get why they wanted, when they plotted it, to have the original one of the nuclear missiles from 1 be the catalyst. And again, it comes back to being a bit strange that, that missile that's flying out in space would happen to collide with the Phantom Zone. Things in space don't often collide that easily, especially if they're on, individual trajectories. But I like the Eiffel Tower scene. I like the interplay. I like Lois trying to find the French word for "Qu'est-ce que c'est le mot for stairs?" Stairs. S-T-A. And then she's just off, right? I love the terrorists. I love the way they're talking to each other. And the one guy says, "I control the bomb does not control me." So there's a lot of scenes, I think, in that first Eiffel Tower scene that showcase that Lester did get Superman.
He gets it.
He knew what he was doing with the character. The Newmans had probably written it for him. And it worked for me. That scene worked for me. And, the lack of it in the Donna cut, for me, it really just feels, like it's missing something. Okay, reason number 4. I think the jokes are a bit forced in the Donna cut. The ones I think Lester left in weren't much better, including some of the ones he added. Yeah, the slapstick may not be for everyone in the scene in Metropolis where the villains are causing a bit of a hurricane. My 7-year-old son absolutely loved it. He found it hilarious. I found it pretty funny when I was a kid. And I watch it now with a bit more nostalgia. Yes, less mature, but I think the nostalgia helps. But even the jokes that I think had been filmed by Donna, so like the exchanges between Lex and Otis, the bedwetter joke, the chats with Miss Tessmacher, they don't work as well for me in the Donna cut. I think the jokes and the humor in the Lester cut work and flow much better. I mean, even little things, and you can see this in the making of documentary, where Perry and Jimmy are pacing in the planet at the end, and Perry notices that Jimmy's pacing at the same pace as him, and he turns and gives him a look because he's not happy with the way he's walking. Little things like that work better for me. Things just seem out of place, like a little bit silly, like the toilet flush in the fortress.
That's not funny.
Lex calling Jor-El, it's the baseball player. Even the lines of Clark at the end, or Superman saying, "Haven't you heard of freedom of the press?" That didn't work as well for me. As a General Zod, would you care to step outside? And again, Lex wanting Cuba in addition to Australia, it was a bit too much, right? I don't think it added a huge amount. So reason number 5, and this is going to be a long one because I've got a lot of things to say on this one as well.
Just get on with it.
I think the flow is a bit off in the Richard Donner cut. I think there are a lot of things in the Donner cut that were a missed opportunity. And I think there are things that Lester had in his version, the continuity was better. So, I mean, when you look at it, it's just quite staccato sometimes in the Donner cut. And yet, I get the film wasn't finished and Donner may have reshot scenes or added scenes. But if you look at it, I mean, Superman flies Lois straight to the fortress after he finds out his identity. The line about orange juice being freshly squeezed doesn't make sense without that first scene where Lester put in that Lois is a chain smoker and is trying to get healthy. Even the scene that Lester had in with Superman picking the flower. So I don't know if this was a Lester or Donner scene, but it's in the Lester cut, and it's beautiful the way Superman flies to a tropical area, picks up a flower, and gives it to Lois. It's in the background of the Donner scene. So either that was amazing continuity or it was a scene that Donner didn't want to include, but little additions like that, I think, work really well in the Lester cut. I mean, then you have Clark or Superman sleeping with Lois when he was still Superman, I mean, fully powered.
That's gonna hurt.
That didn't make a lot of sense to me. Even Lester points this out in the documentary himself. The scene in the town when the villains arrive to take it over, which has a brilliant line that I still quote to this day, where arm wrestling and that guy says, "Say you only smell strong." There are the other scenes about the extended version of the Donner cut, where it's pretty horrific with the boy who will never be a man. I like the Lester cut flow where Non is trying to get his heat vision to work, and you get the payoff at the end where he hits the tank, hits the Jeep, and he's very happy with himself. I thought the Washington Monument break, I know the effects weren't great, wasn't as impactful as Mount Rushmore, which I thought was a very cool and interesting switch. Even the talk with Jor-El, I mean, I found Susanna York as his mum, when they were talking about how much he loves Lois, to be a lot more emotional and empathetic in the way that was portrayed versus, I guess, Jor-El being more of the sort of harsher figure. I mean, Jor-El definitely says to Clark that he's selfish to fall in love. He should have the appreciation of humanity should be enough for him.
Mean, Daddy.
And he really rubs it in the end that Clark made a mistake by giving his powers up. And I know Jor-El sacrifices himself to give Clark his powers back. But, ultimately it's showing Superman's naivety and the fact that he does make mistakes. But Jor-El was a little bit too sort of harsh and I think a little bit too all-knowing in that sense. Whereas it really did seem like you had no hope when Clark went back to the fortress in the Lester cut. No one's there, right? And then he sees the crystal. No one's there. In the Donner cut, he goes back, he meets Jor-El, and you see, okay, he's got an out here. He's got a lifeline. There's no fight at the fortress in the Donner cut, so it feels that the ending is quite short, even though I know the Metropolis fight is longer. If you watch the Donner cut, there's a bit where Superman tries to grab Lex Luthor. He lunges at him, and he misses grabbing Lex Luthor. A man with super speed and super abilities cannot grab hold of a human being trying to walk away. It looks a bit comical, to be honest.
That don't make no sense.
And Then, of course, there is the turning back time scene, which was supposed to be the big scene for 2. Obviously, they used it in 1, but Donna brought it back for 2 as well. I think it's okay in some ways, but, you got to ask about continuity. Why do you have to go beat up a bully if you turn back time and he hasn't bullied you? I get that maybe he's not a good guy and he needs to be taught a lesson. But if you watch the scene, the diner owner says he just spent a fortune fixing up the place. That line doesn't even make sense if time has gone back, because there would have been no fight in the diner. So, yeah, Superman's a little bit of an... I don't want to say the word. He's a bit of a bully in that scene if the time travel is part of the continuity, because that guy hasn't done anything. I actually also prefer the kiss scene, which some folks may say is crazy, not from the comics. I mean, he did kind of have that power in 1 issue, so look it up if you don't know.
Did he really?
But yeah, it's a little bit of an out there power, and I'll get the ridiculous of that end part of it. But actually, the acting just before, to me, is way stronger, way more emotional, has way more impact than the Donna cut where she's talking to him at the end in the fortress, just outside the fortress before he blows it up with that crazy face. And then they fly, he flies her back home, and she's crying by the time they get home, and she talks about, see you at work tomorrow. And that's when Superman decides to turn back time. If you listen to Margot Kidder's performance, you watch it in the Lester version, which was obviously shot later, that pent-up emotion that she releases about how she stayed up all night and she was crying, and I guess she's like being married to a doctor, the fact that she says, I am jealous. I'm jealous of the whole world. I mean, that really was delivered so beautifully that you can kind of see, even the line Clark says, like, I do like worrying about you. It's just so beautifully acted.
Now, see, that's acting.
That it gives more of an impetus for me, for Clark to use his random super memory wiping kiss power from, 1 panel in the comics to get rid of Lois's feelings and all of the pain that she'll have to go through knowing his secret. That comes across much more to me in that scene than the Donna cut. And I guess, finally that last bit, right? In the Donna cut, after Superman has beaten up the bully who didn't actually bully him, he flies off into the sky above the atmosphere and smiles, and you get the usual Superman ending. But in the Lester cut, they added the scene where he flies the American flag back to the White House, and it's a little bit overly patriotic.
USA! USA! USA!
And, I think the scene at the start, obviously I said before, establishes Superman's around the world, but he does fly it back to see the president, and he drops it down, and looking down, and he says to the president, sorry, I've been away so long, I won't let you down again. Again, to me, that was really well delivered. Sums up Superman's character. Yes, he's a big blue Boy Scout, and Frank Miller plays heavily upon that in Dark Knight Returns, clearly. But just having that scene of Superman admitting, his mistakes with humility and grace, and speaking to the president in a way that really tries to reassure him that, look, it was a tough situation, but I'm here now, I'll do my best, and going forwards, I'll really won't let you down again. It sums up his character very well. Very well. And again, that was missing from the Donna cut. So there you have it. Quite a long video this time around. Superman 2, as I said, is a very big influence in my life. Hugely favorite film of mine. I've watched both versions many times. And really the intent of this video was to try and give Richard Lester a bit more credit than he currently gets. I don't want to take anything away from Donna. But again, I think Richard Lester gets easily put upon, easily sort of forgotten. People are easily dismissing him. And I think we are doing a disservice to the man because he did deliver a theatrical cut that to this day is very watchable and very enjoyable.
Guys, it's just a movie.
A great movie.
So that's it. Hope to see you on the next one. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. It would really help the channel. Very much look forward to reading your comments. There are a large number of passionate Richard Donner fans out there. And, you know, part of me is in that camp. I love the Donner cut too. But I want to try and use this video, as I said, to defend Richard Lester a bit more. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I really look forward to reading them and catch you next time.